Happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I'm so excited to have Kevin here on the show. When I actually found Kevin through a Google search, I'm going to toot his horn a little bit. I Googled basically Pacific Islander activists and leaders, and Kevin was one of the people to show up. So, really excited to have you here on the show, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here. And I appreciate you, letting the folks know I'm Googleable. It feels very, very weird, but there's not that many Kevin Aipopos out there, so it's not that big of a deal.
No, it's a big deal. I didn't search your name. I searched Pacific Islander activist and you came up. You should be proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess we can start off by you just sharing a little bit more about who you are and kind of where you're from or where is home to you.
Yeah, so my name is Kevin Aipopo. I use all pronouns. I currently stay in the traditional lands of the Atfalati and Kalupuya tribes in what is known as Tigard, Oregon, just a little bit southwest of Portland. But I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, traditionally Puyallup land. So yeah, my mother is Samoan, my dad is Black American, and both of those identities I hold very closely in my person, in my being, and it's how I show up in my work. And, being someone who is not only a descendant of diaspora and militarism and migration and, the transatlantic slave trade, where home is becomes really difficult because I'm in someone else's home here, not fully by will, but trying to make the best that I can with, asking permission of the folks whose land this really is, and also understanding who my folks are. So whenever I get this question, I have a hard time attaching home to a specific place because I think it's easier for me to find home in people. And then I'll, of course, get the question, who are your people? And I could say, Samoan people are my people, Black people are my people, queer folks are my people. I think these answers are kind of obvious, but I think more than trying to define who my people are, it's just if you're my people, when we meet and I see you and we talk, we feel each other, and that exchange of energy and breath is how I know I found home in someone new.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we talked a little bit about that too, is where is home? And it's really the people that you meet and who you resonate with and who are just there too, because home doesn't always have to be a place. And I really like that kind of aspect that you shared about coming from different places and it not truly being your home because it belonged to other people. I think that's not something that I honestly always think about. So it's really nice kind of hearing your perspective on that. And I know you shared a little bit kind of more about your cultural background and how you represent two different cultures and the intersectionality of that. How has coming from ancestors who come from two different places influence kind of your current work or who you are today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do my best to try to bring my full self into everything that I do. I feel like so much of society and so much of the way that people understand identity is compartmentalized, right? They want me to show up as my Samoan self or show up as my Black self, but never what those two things mean moving in conjunction and what they create as they exist within me simultaneously. And it really influences a lot of my work. I think I try my best first and foremost to understand the similarities between the culture. And that's what's led me through a lot of my activist work, a lot of my community organizing, and my poetry is understanding that I have two very deep lineages of oration and spoken word, and that part of what I'm trying to do in my work is reclaim that validity of the spoken word, right? Because all of our histories have been transcribed through people and through language, and we didn't have written languages before colonization. And we now live in a world in which for something to be seen as legitimate or for something to be seen as, worth noting, it has to go through all these academic processes that require peer review and require all these people signing off. And you have to have this paper that says you're willing to say these things and that you're worth listening to. And I just want to like reinstate and reinvigorate that deep sense of my culture that values that, right? I think it's also difficult sometimes because I have to exist at a really interesting level of oppression. Like when you see me phenotypically, like I'm much more Pacific Islander presenting, which wasn't the case for a lot of my life. But now that like my hair is long and I got tattoos, like people see me and they're like, that's a Samoan person. And with that, it's been more difficult for me to like step into a Black space and feel fully myself. But more than that, it's really called me to a responsibility to understand the intricacies of anti-Blackness within my own culture and experiences. Like my brother, my sister, and a few of my cousins are all Black. And through Samoan culture, we've experienced a pretty significant amount of discrimination and prejudice. And it's something that is like built so deep into the culture that people aren't challenging different pieces of language. And so I'm always trying to find ways to like push back on that front, feel like I can be my own self in spaces, and also find a way to like bring these cultures together. Because I think, you know, when folks were emigrating here in the 80s, especially a lot of Samoan people coming into places like California and into Washington from Hawaii and from territories, there wasn't a lot of folks who were Black and Samoan or Black and Samoan, right? But there are now. And so having to understand who we are, the privileges we hold, and also the oppressions we face has been a journey. It's ongoing for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Are you comfortable, and can you share how it was kind of navigating that growing up?
Yeah. Yeah, growing up it was difficult. It was difficult because we were able to understand, like it was made very clear that who we were was different, and that different wasn't good. And so I think it took a long time for my siblings and I to really feel comfortable in the ways that we like felt connected to our family, especially because like in our family dynamic, spent a lot of time around my Samoan family, around my mom's, you know, brothers and sisters and all our cousins, and not as much time with my dad's family because they have a smaller dynamic. And so there wasn't like we had two equal spaces in which we were feeling different senses of communication, right? Like everything that we had was coming from one side. And so navigating those identities was really difficult, especially since we all look pretty different, right? Like when my sister moves to the world, she's very clearly a Black woman. And when my brother moves to the world, like he has more racial ambiguity, and folks are often confused about what his ethnic background is, and he gets the "where are you from" all the time. And so having the three of us, my brother kind of being like, well, we're not really sure what he is, my sister being clearly a Black woman, and me looking very much like a Samoan man, our experiences varied within that. So I think being able to find common ground in each other and being able to go home and be like, you know, what Uncle said is not okay, but he still loves us, was hard to have those conversations and understand. I think as I've grown older, we've definitely taken a lot of opportunities to try to challenge that even further. And the difficulty with that is that, like, when we're talking about the importance of language and things, right? Like, it's built so deeply. When you make a challenge towards language, it can be seen as a form of disrespect, right? You're challenging the culture. And it's hard sometimes to find ways to recenter and acknowledge, like, just because it's cultural doesn't mean that it's safe or that it's important or that it's just. It just means that it's practice. And so, especially when we're at a point where there are more Samoans living off the island than on the island, and folks are like not learning the language. I myself don't speak fluent Samoan. I wish I did, but it's hard to pass that on, hard to continue it. Folks feel that any form of speaking out against, you know, problematic things that exist can be really detrimental because they're trying to hold on to every piece they can as they're moving forward. Yeah, so definitely feels like there's a lot going on. One thing I remember having a large conversation with my family about was the term meauli. So in Samoan, there's a word meauli that's used to describe Black people. Um, the word uli means dark or black, and the word mea means thing. Um, and this is like, I mean, I don't really have to explain like how problematic that is. But I really wanted folks to like take a step back and realize how what we consider everyday common language is rooted in so much darkness and like so much oppression. And it's not a term that has been used always, right? That's the big argument I get whenever I tell folks like we should be using the term Tamata Uli Uli instead, because it means, Black people or dark people. Folks are like, you're just, you're pulling at straws, you're making up arguments, you're trying to say, you're mixing up meanings. It's not true. The reason that we're using these language now is because it's a result of colonization. If we go back, right, 100 years ago, 1918, there's a Samoan historian named Te'otu Vale, and he wrote an accord of Samoan history up to that point. And this is actually accessible in a free library at the University of Auckland, I believe, in New Zealand. Yeah, so if you look into this, there's a section called Terms of Abuse. And the language that's being used here is not like, it's not bad words. It's not like mean things you say to your friends. It is the worst of the worst things that you could say about another person. And in this, the term meauli is specifically referenced. And in the description, it says that it is strictly forbidden for Samoa, strictly forbidden against the ways of Samoa, to refer to a person as an animal or thing. Right? And this is like, this is only 20 years after American Samoa was annexed, 20 years after, the UK, Germany, and US are fighting over this island. So it's like one of the closest pre-colonial documents that we have access to. So I'm like, that's the culture. That's what's real. But you can move forward ahead and ahead. We only know what we know. And I just want to make sure that folks are fully aware that like, yes, we've said these things. Yes, we've used these things. But when you really look at the core of who we are and the practices we hold, this is not in line with that.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's a lot that I didn't know about. And I'm definitely going to check out that book at the University of Auckland that you mentioned too. How do you navigate those challenges like you were mentioning, right? It's so embedded in who they are and their culture. And something that really resonated to me that you said was they're trying to keep their culture, like, so the language that they use is so important to them. So when you challenge that, it sounds disrespectful, but it's also coming, kind of understanding that it's coming from a place that they're trying to hold on to as much as they can, knowing that they migrated to a new place and had to assimilate and kind of overcome those challenges. So that's just a lot to reflect on, I think, just from what you were mentioning. It's like, okay, it's how do I understand what's going on in their heads, but also knowing that in my generation now, my greater understanding and my background and experience is like, that's not okay. So let's to touch on it and kind of like, how do you navigate that, and kind of just reflecting on my own too.